What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Dopes podcast. Once again, we are not amateurs of fantasy football. However, we are just as accurate as the so-called experts out there in the fantasy sports community. We combine pseudo-expert analysis and water cooler banner on all things fantasy football to bring you a unique edge in dominating your fantasy leagues. My name is Jillian Parker, and I'd like to welcome in some fantasy dopes, Mr. Michael Herbert and Mr. John Fazio. What's going on, boys?
Oh, thank you for that lovely introduction. It was a little wordy, but it was great. It was
That
wonderful.
sounds exactly like my intro that I had about a week ago. I think somebody's carbon copying my answers.
I don't know. It's what I got. It's what I got here.
Thank you for having us on the show. It's gonna be a good one. I think we should have some fun here.
We should sound more
We
confident
should.
about that. It's going to be a great
Yeah,
show.
seriously, John.
Hey,
Great show.
Get your energy in
Hey,
check, John.
yeah. If you get your expectations a little lower, then it'll be a better product, right?
It's not a relationship. This is a show.
Oh, okay. All right then. With that being said,
I'm a Dolphins fan, so my expectations are pretty low to start with.
there we go. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's all I'm saying.
I'm going to bring up your top pick of the week first, John. It was a pretty gusty pick at the time, but if you took this advice and started this player, then you racked up a ton of points this past week. I am talking about the wide receiver and now also quarterback of the Browns, Terrell Pryor.
Yeah, I mean, he could be a running back too. That dude was like Bobby Boucher out there. He fucking played quarterback. He was a wide receiver. Went into the Wildcats, scored a touchdown. But let's just break down some of these numbers here. He had 8 catches for 144 yards receiving on 14 targets. He had 4 rushes for 21 yards, including that touchdown I mentioned earlier. And he went 3 for 5 passing, threw for 35 yards. I mean, this guy was unbelievable. He had like over 30 points in my PPR league. I'm sure he had around 25 in standard scoring. Dude was a monster. Herbert, I told you.
So, you did, and remember, I was the one that said he's also a quarterback. So
Yes, you did.
Here's my question: if he's listed as a receiver, do you get passing yards?
You do. In my
You do.
league, everything is counted as one source. So, like, if he's a quarterback, you get quarterback points.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's the case in all of my leagues as well. I don't know if that's in every single league, but
Yeah, I'm just curious how that works. I mean,
It's not something I thought to look into till this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to remember. J.J. Watt, I think, was the guy I brought up last week. He was out for a wide receiver, and because I had him in my IDP league, he was eligible as a receiver in our league, and he actually got me points for a catch and a touchdown, and
That's
the yards
right.
he gained. So I'm pretty sure it's the same as with this guy too. I mean, Joe Webb, who was the quarterback for the Vikings, was also a wide receiver as well.
yes.
So and if I remember correctly, in Yahoo at least, he was eligible to be put into one of those 2 slots. So
Right, but I guess that's my question: is if Perel's a wide receiver and you have him in that spot and he throws a touchdown, are you getting that 6 points?
yeah, well,
As a wide receiver, or is that like?
if he's throwing the
You know what
ball
I'm
as a
saying?
quarterback, it's a 4-point play. It's as if he's a quarterback and he's
Right.
Right.
But if he's a wide receiver, he gets 6. So yeah, it's
Oh, sure.
it's very interesting. But it's funny because my friend texted me prior to the games on kickoff on Sunday, and he asked me a couple of a dilemma was basically, do I start him or do I start Tajay Sharp? And kind of segueing here into Sharp, and I mentioned that he would have a decent game, but had a bit of a disappointing day. Only had 3 catches for 48 yards on 7 targets, but only 1 catch for 6 yards prior to their final drive. So it was a very disappointing day for him in my eyes. I know the coach, Mike Mularkey, said that he took a step back, but I think when somebody says that, a coach especially, I think that just gives the player more of a drive to become better. And I know they're going up against the Houston Texans. They have one of the best defenses against wide receivers, but I feel like he's going to have a bounce back game. I don't know how you feel, Herbert.
I don't think he can have a much worse game. So I think you got to feel good about him bouncing back. I also don't know. I don't know that Pryor's going to be such a breakout guy week in and week out either. Now that the league is on to him, they'll adjust and they'll spy him, and we'll see.
Yeah, so essentially my friend started Sharp because he was fearful of a rookie unknown, and that kind of bit him back. I don't know how you did in your leagues.
Bit him in the end. Well, I guess he didn't. I guess he didn't listen to the podcast.
He did not listen to the podcast.
Right.
Listen to this
there you go.
podcast.
His
And he
mistake.
would have gotten that answer.
He
But
learned his lesson.
Yes, he did. He's now tuned in every week.
Somebody else you brought up last week, Todd Gurley. He looked like his old self again.
Yeah, he rushed for 27 times, 85 yards. Not really too big of a number, but he did get 2 touchdowns. Both were at the 1 yard line. The thing that worries me is that he's averaging so far 2.9 yards per carry. So he's again another tough team they're going up against. It's the Cardinals, who are in Arizona, and they were blown out shockingly by the Bills 38-3-18. McCoy had a big day, 17 carries, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. I believe the Cardinals aren't going to screw up as badly again this weekend. But again, I may not be as highly on Gurley as others again this week, so got to listen to that podcast later on in the week where we dive into the fringe players, like we call.
Those fringe players.
Yeah.
Jillian did. Well, I know that Jillian, in our production meeting, Jillian was talking about Palmer. Not to get off topic, but what was your question about Palmer, Jillian?
Palmer, to play Palmer over Rivers or to not play Palmer over Rivers? And I am leaning with the not playing Palmer over Rivers this week.
Well, you'll have to let us know so we can hold you accountable next week.
Oh, I will let you know. I will be letting, after the disappointing week I had this week, I will be letting you know.
Okay.
Want to talk about some tight ends?
Sure. What do you got?
That faced off on Monday Night Football.
Say it again. That was good though. Someone had a little bit too much of the green.
I thought that Fleener was very firm. He had a very firm performance on Monday night.
Hey,
no,
anyone? No, I mean on the podcast last time.
John wants to get some more props for this prediction. That's what he wants.
Yeah. I mean, I had a coworker. I think I mentioned this in the podcast last week. Come up to me and was like, Fleener's not doing anything. I'm gonna start Jacob Tamme instead. I don't. Who cares about Fleener anymore? Screw him. I was like, hey, you do what you want, bro, but I'm gonna start Fleener. Falcons give up.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, the Falcons give up the most points to a tight end dating back to last season. I had a feeling Monday Night Football he was gonna shine, and he did not disappoint. 7 catches on 11 targets, 109 yards, and a touchdown. Come on now.
Listen, I'm with you. We had talked about this week too, when I said, I picked up Ebron, but I did not discard Fleener because I felt like he'd get it together with what's his name, Drew Brees, the little guy, Drew Brees,
the little guy.
So the little guy, and he did. I started him as well, and he had what we'd call a breakout performance. So it was fantastic. It was lovely to see, and definitely read the comments from the little guy Brees. He's they're still working it out. So I think that there's still ceiling there.
I mean, I just feel like that's a player you don't give up on, especially because you spent either a decent amount of money in an auction league or you picked him up in the 6th or 7th round of your fantasy draft. So that's a guy, he's going to have maybe some mediocre games, but there's obviously some big high ceiling potential with Fleener. And I think Tamme had like a pedestrian night. I believe he had 3 catches for 28 yards on 4 targets. So wasn't as pedestrian as Julio Jones, though, right, Herbert?
Oh, I mean, listen, I was going against him, so he helped me. His terrible performance helped me get a win. But
murdered me.
He murdered you. He slayed you. Why don't you tell us about that, Jillian?
Him and Carson Palmer on the same team. I needed the two of them and D'Angelo Williams to come together and get me 30 points. Not per person, just together as a whole. Julio Jones got me, I don't know, 3 or 4 points, I think. Horrible. Terrible.
I saw the box score and I was like, oh, Julio must have had a pretty good night. And I looked at the box score, so it was like 2 catches. I was like, oh, man.
Basically how I felt about Allen Robinson the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
That's how I felt about Jones.
I mean, at this point, I would say the top 7 receivers in the league have all had absolute dog performances at least once in 3 games. So
yeah, that's accurate.
Odell, Brown, yep.
Yeah. Very
AJ Green and Antonio Brown, they've all had total stinkers.
Des Bryant.
Yep.
Really hate that, don't you?
Yeah, as you can tell, being a Giants fan, going Des Bryant, it's got to be the single most frustrating thing so far this season. Want to know which fringe players you should start or sit in your fantasy leagues? Want up-to-the-minute news and analysis from the beat reporters around the league? Follow @FantasyDopes on Twitter to get your fix and fill the void of having to worry about which player will feast or famine.